Hello, my name's Zesis, but you can call me Zach, and this video features me using a 500mm 45-year-old Nikon lens. It is fixed at f8, it is a mirror lens, which is why it looks so damn wacky when you look at the first few clips that I had in this video. It's an interesting lens, it's very chonky. And the reason I'm providing this voiceover is because I want to go into a bit of depth behind what I'm actually doing, because when I'm out taking photos, it's sort of hard to speak and explain myself at the same time. That photo right there, that's something that I love to do. I love to take photos of subjects through a moving tram window, simply because it is challenging and it never really works out all the time. Well, it never really works out the way I want it to, but because it is so spontaneous and unpredictable, sometimes it turns out really well when I would have thought it's going to be really bad. As you can see, I'm just taking photos from across the street. I'm literally across the street and it looks like I'm right up close. It's insane how far 500mm gets you. And the weird thing is, like, this lens, it is really wide, but it's quite stocky. Like, it is the equivalent of a short, stocky person. It has character, I'll tell you that. Look at the bokeh in any of these photos. This shot, for example, coming up, I took this because I wanted to somewhat tell some sort of story, but leave it more up to the viewer. I also didn't want to exploit that person's condition for my own benefit. It's a whole thing with like how to be responsible and ethical when taking photos, and I personally just don't like going ahead and taking photos if it is clearly telling or projecting my own thoughts about somebody else's state unfairly. That's a whole other story. As you can see, 500mm, lots of range. It is surprisingly sharp. I love this portrait. Look at the bokeh there, actually. That was what I'm talking about. Onion ring bokeh. Because of that mirror design, it ends up having a hole in the center of the bokeh rings. It's an interesting characteristic, quite ugly in some regards, but also can make your photos stand out a bit. The photos that you see don't necessarily match up exactly with what I'm doing on screen. They were taken at around the same time, in around the same place. It's simply because it's just really difficult to keep track of everything when, first of all, I can barely see in the POV footage what I'm actually taking photos of, and secondly, using silent shutter, trying to match up anything is impossible on such a bright, sunny day like this. Another thing you might be wondering is, why am I taking photos in bright, direct sunlight? In terms of street photography, in terms of portraiture, when you're taking photos, usually you want to avoid those really harsh shadows, and this is not considered like optimal conditions for most applications. The reason is that this lens is f8 at 500mm, which means that to get anything, right, to get any photos looking good, I have to make sure that the shutter speed is pretty much 1/500, or 1/500th of a second every time. I really like this shot, by the way. It's here. I like it. Of course, it doesn't need to be, but I have to take every photo at pretty much 1/500th of a second or faster, otherwise I risk it being blurry. And this lens doesn't have in-body stabilization. I did set my camera's steady shot to be 500mm equivalent, but on top of all of that, the lens itself, the actual design, the reflex or mirror lens design, means that even though it's an f8 lens, it doesn't let in the same amount of light as a modern f8 lens would. And that is because And that is because aperture is not actually a measure of how much light a lens will let in, but rather how big the opening is relative to the focal length. And that's why if you've done any sort of video work, if you've been browsing lenses in camera stores, that sort of thing, you might have come across these lenses that have T-stops instead of f-stops. And that's because a T-stop is specifically designed to let in the exact same amount of light. A T-stop of 3.1 on one lens and 3.1 on another will always let in the same amount of light, whereas an f3.1 lens, odd number, but an f3.1 lens will not necessarily let in the same amount of light because it has a different design optically. It might have more or less elements which will impact the amount of light actually getting in, so on and so forth. So that's the difference between f-stops and t-stops, if you didn't know. In the video here, you can see I'm actually walking onto the shrine and trying to figure out what to take photos of. I haven't actually, well, when I recorded this, which was about 11 months prior to me doing this editing now, I hadn't actually been to the shrine with my camera. So I figured, why not go when I've got the most possible range in a single lens? 500mm, can't go wrong. So yeah, walking through, you can see, I wasn't taking photos inside. There's no useful way that I can use the 500mm. I did take photos with my 16-35 afterwards, but I didn't record that with the POV. Some people might have seen those photos though while I was editing them live on Twitch, but that's already happened. So here you can see I'm trying to line up a shot. It looks a bit weird. You can't really see much subject matter, but surprise, surprise, it is actually a shot of a street. And I wanted to have something in the foreground to make it a bit more interesting, but didn't really work out as ideally as I wanted. I gotta say that the view from the shrine is great. And here's a perfect example of me not, barely being able to tell what I'm actually taking a photo of in the POV. You see I line it up and, oh, okay, there's a crane there? I can barely even tell, and yet this lens just reaches that far like it's nothing. And it's small. It's really small, so it's sort of mind-blowing when you pop it on your camera and you're like, oh, wait a second, this isn't like just Sigma's 85? Because it sure as hell looks like it. Oh, this is important. Focus here. See the person in the right walking through? You won't be able to see it on the camera screen because it is incredibly bright outside, but when I go and take this shot, I was really happy with this. Just check it out. Did I mention this lens is manual focus? All of this has been manually focusing at 500mm, street photography. That is insane. Try do anything manual focus, right? It already adds a challenge. But at 500mm, where you've got this massively difficult to handle lens because it is so short, oh my God, it was a challenge, let me tell you, but it was worth it. I can't complain. I think I got some pretty cool shots. They were originally edited in color, but I didn't end up keeping those versions because I preferred the black and white edits that I made today. You'll also probably have noticed that I have long hair in this video. It's because it's that old that I actually had hair. If you liked the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment of what your favorite photo was, or if there was something of interest specifically to you. Make sure to subscribe and enable notifications so that you can see my next upload. And before I sign off, just a quick reminder that I do have prints and presets available in my online store. You can find that link in the description. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day or night, if you're watching this at like 2 a.m. and you know you should be asleep, trust me, go to bed. Don't do what I do. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.